Omaha's news leader, chronicling the stories and people making a difference in our community. This is KETV News Watch 7's Chronicle.
It's back to business in the state capitol, and the business is your money.
Hey Rob, how you doing?
Governor, I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, great.
Governor Pete Ricketts starts his second term with the same wish list, and once again at the top, property taxes. And this morning on Chronicle, my exclusive one-on-one with the governor in his office. I'm Rob McCartney. He presented his budget to state senators, and now they're getting to the heart of it. That includes his plan for property tax relief, which he broke down for us.
First, it involves increasing the property tax credit relief fund by $51 million, or 23%, and that relief fund goes to all property owners in the state. So it's direct dollar-for-dollar tax relief from the state to all property owners in the state. The second thing we want to do, working with Senator Lindstrom, is to put a floor. So by adding in $51 million, it'll take it up to $275 million, which is nearly double where it was when I started as governor. And we want to put a floor so that it can't fall below that. So it stays at least at $275 million. And then finally, I'm working with Senator Linehan on a constitutional amendment that would be, if the legislature approves it, go on the ballot in 2020 to allow Nebraska voters to limit how much can be collected from them in property taxes, that limit specifically being an increase of 3% per year. So really looking at some of the things we've done in the past with regard to levy lids and valuations and so forth, at the end of the day, people don't pay property taxes in valuations or lids, they pay it in dollars. So let's limit the amount of dollars that local government can increase their property taxes as a way to help limit what people are paying, and then also encourage fiscal discipline on local government units. And of course, that's important because we, the state, we don't collect property taxes. That's all collected at the local level.
Let's talk about that third one, then, the constitutional amendment. I mean, Omaha Mayor Gene Stothert and others are opposing that 3% cap. They don't like that. They say basically, she says it would limit or basically hamstring her ability to make financial decisions. You don't agree with that?
No, I disagree with that. So first of all, one of the things I think she talked about was doing annexations. If you annexed another subdivision, SID or whatever, that property tax base would become part of yours. So that 3% wouldn't be limited, you'd just be additive, right? So if you add it to your base would be bigger for that 3%. The second thing is, it doesn't impact any other tax but property taxes. So it doesn't have anything to do with the sales taxes cities may collect, the restaurant tax in Omaha, things like that. It wouldn't impact those at all. So there's other revenue streams, and frankly, sales tax growth probably is more aligned with real economic growth with regard to that. And then the third thing is, the part of the constitutional amendment is that if a local taxing entity needs to go above that 3%, all they have to do is go to the voters and say to the people, hey, we've got a special circumstance or whatever, make the case for why the people should vote to go above that 3% lid. So there certainly is a way for local taxing entities to do it, but they have to go back and ask the people that they're being taxed to be able to get their permission to go over. And that's part of how we can get people involved in this process to make sure that they have a direct input on how much their property taxes are going up.
So is it fair to say that you are actually suggesting to the cities that they may have to raise things like sales taxes if they want to go above and beyond that 3% cap? And you in the past have said you don't want to raise any taxes.
No, I'm talking about sales tax growth just through economic growth.
Right.
So
right.
as your economic base grows, your sales tax grows as well. I'm suggesting what they should do is do what we're doing at the state, which is control your spending. So for example, the budget I proposed this year, my agency operations are only growing at 2.3%. So that's the kind of fiscal restraint that allows us to put more money into the property tax credit relief fund, that $51 million we talked about. So that's really what we're trying to do, is encourage that fiscal discipline.
And explain to me where the money's going to come from if we want to have property tax relief. How do you explain to the average person out there, the money's got to come from somewhere. We still need to run the government.
Yeah, so if you look at what we've done at state government, for example, by controlling our spending, that 2.3% I told you about, we are able to put more money into the property tax credit relief fund, that $51 million a year. And in fact, if you look at what I proposed our entire budget to grow by, it's about $280 million. And two things really account for more than half of that growth. One is fully funding the TIOSA formula. So the TIOSA formula, the school aid formula, calls for $103.8 million. And so we've fully funded that. and then also Medicaid expansion, which the people voted on. So again, the people voted for it, and so we're dedicating $63 million, which is what we project it will cost over the next biennium, to fund Medicaid expansion. So those two things, nearly $167 million, account for over half of the growth in the proposed spending in the budget that I put forward. So we're continuing to manage our budget and still be able to put $51 million in that property tax credit relief fund. That's a 23% increase. So that's significant property tax relief.
Okay, leading up to the November election, you told us this is a quote, "We'll work with the legislature to figure out what is that combination that will allow us to get both rural and urban senators to support a bill that will allow us to deliver property tax relief." Okay, that said, you said that. If all the other tax proposals that are out there require some form of tax increase or tax shift, is there any way you could support that based on what you said?
Well, I'm certainly willing to work with the senators, and there are other ideas out there about property tax relief. So for example, Senator Erdman has a bill to change the way we value ag land to an income potential assessment. We have a market-based sales assessment today, and what that's led to over the last 10 years is ag land valuations have gone up 252%, and taxes paid on ag land has gone up 162%. So you can see that's significant growth year over year in those taxes paid on ag land. Other states haven't experienced that because they've got this income potential assessment. States like North Dakota, South Dakota, Kansas, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, all these ag states have done it, they've valued their ag land a different way. And so this is a great opportunity for us to be able to reform how we value ag land to part address this issue. So that's one thing. There's other proposals out there as well. But you can't raise taxes to lower taxes. That doesn't make any sense, right? You're not getting real tax relief. And it's not right to tax one group of people to give another group of people tax relief. And so within the principles that I have with regard to we're not going to raise taxes, and by the way, nobody should be surprised by that, right? This is something I've been talking about for 5 years, that I'm not going to support tax increases. Within that framework, though, of not raising people's taxes, what can we do to work to be able to provide that property tax relief?
Economic Forecasting Advisory Board meets again February 28th. I mean, all of the budget numbers, everything rests pretty much on what they say. What do you think they're going to say?
Well, I'm really not on that board, so I really couldn't make a projection. I do know we have to continue to exercise fiscal restraint because our revenues have not met forecast over the last several months. And so that's why I think that we want to continue to make sure we're constraining spending. And again, if you look at the budget I proposed, my agency operations are only growing at 2.3%.
You are proposing 6% increase to University of Nebraska, 6.2% increase to state colleges, and what about 4% to community colleges? It's more than you've done in the past. I mean, they've had to fight for it in the past.
Well, actually, if you go back and look at my first budget, the universities and actually all higher education got treated about the same as everybody else. I believe my first year budget increase for the University of Nebraska, for example, was 3.6%. So, again, when our forecast allowed for it, our higher education institutions have been treated very well and been treated, pretty much like every place else where we have to prioritize where we're spending money on. And so that's really what we were attempting to do as well this year. And not only are we proposing that 6% growth over the biennium, for example, for the university and for the state colleges, actually over 6%, but we're also proposing the Nebraska Talent Scholarship Program, which would be another $1 million in the first year and then doubling in the second year, going to $3 million, $4 million in the future years for these talent scholarships, these $4,000 a year scholarships, to be able to target key industries that we have, like for the University of Nebraska, it could be math, engineering, healthcare. For the state colleges, it's things like computer information systems and industrial technology, rangeland management, anything at our Nebraska College of Technical Agriculture in Curtis. For our community colleges, we really want them to work with local businesses to decide what the best would be there. So really, again, targeting those key areas where we've got high demand to provide additional scholarships. So that's on top of what we're proposing to cover for things like salary increases and healthcare benefits.
One thing I want to ask you, it goes back to Medicaid expansion. When you were running and you opposed to Medicaid expansion, you said repeatedly it would crowd out K to 12 education, it would crowd out funding to higher education, it would crowd out property tax relief. Do you still believe that because you're funding these other areas?
Well, it's about balancing the priorities, but again, let's take the $63 million we talked about for Medicaid expansion. If we weren't putting that $63 million to Medicaid expansion, we would have more money for all those other things. We'd have more money for property tax relief, we'd have more money for the university, all those sort of things we would have more money for.
Well, more money is earmarked for Nebraska's troubled corrections department, but not as much as what workers want. The governor on that, the battle for medical marijuana, and his plan to ease your commute.
If you're talking about trying to attract young people, it's got a cool factor to it because it's new.
That's when our conversation continues on KETV News Watch 7's Chronicle.
This bill is about retaining those veterans here in our state.
Saying he wants to help military retirees, Governor Pete Ricketts is pushing a plan to exempt half of military retirement pay from being taxed. Ricketts told the legislature's Revenue Committee it would help keep skilled workers in Nebraska, but it would cost the state nearly $17 million in the first 2 years. Now, Ricketts also wants money to add nearly 400 beds at the Lincoln Correctional Center. The hope is to improve security, ease overcrowding. Those are major issues for corrections workers. But their union is at an impasse with the governor over wages. The union wants a 20% hike over 4 years. The governor is offering 2%.
One of the things we proposed, again, is that 2% increase plus a 0.3% merit increase. And we have also worked with the union on different other areas to target things like our correctional officers with other raises, and so forth. So we'll continue to do that work, whether it's with the legislature or the union or whomever, to be able to make sure that we're paying our folks in an appropriate way. But right now, for example, if you look at where we are versus other states' correctional systems, which is how this array has kind of worked for our comparability in the CIR, the Commission on Industrial Relations, we're about 9% higher than what other states are paying. So we're already, in many ways, above it. What we'd like to do is continue to look for kind of the creative ways that we've done things in the past with regard to bonuses for signing on with us, bonuses for referring people to us, bonuses for staying with us and still meeting, while you're performing your job and so forth, kind of stay pay bonuses and so forth. Those are the sorts of things that we want to continue to do to look for creative ways that we can reward our people and keep our teammates on board, as well as all the other things we're doing with regard to professional development, the things we're investing in with regard to more programming, the innovative programs we've got, for example, to hire people in Omaha and bring them down to Tecumseh. Those are a variety of different ways that we're looking to be able to meet our staffing needs and be creative about it.
Do you think that will be enough for the staff if they're already dissatisfied now and they want more money?
Well, I think that's one aspect of it. But again, if you look at what we're doing with regard to programming, investing in security, and all that sort of thing, those are addressing other areas of concern. And we actually, if you look year over year, have reduced the amount of turnover. Now, it's not where we want it to be. We still have more work to do on that. But we have made progress in 2018, year over year, with regard to our turnover rate.
Medical marijuana and hemp. Medical marijuana, it's legal in 33 states in the District of Columbia. It's allowed in 13 more states, including in Iowa. It's heavier regulated. That's 46 of the 50 states. Nebraska, Kansas, South Dakota, Idaho are the only ones that don't. Are we on the right side of history here?
Well, we have a process to take drugs like marijuana and turn them into things that can be prescribed by doctors in a way that's safe and effective for specific ailments and specific dosages with known side effects. And it's called the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA. And that's the process we need to follow, and marijuana is following that process through certain drugs, and those drugs have been approved, at least starting to get approved, like one for children with epilepsy to control seizures. And in fact, the state of Nebraska actually helped pay for some of that research. So the process is working. I know it's not fast enough for some of these families, and I understand because they're very sympathetic and they're looking for solutions. But we have to make sure we're also protecting the public safety, broadly speaking. We don't want to have something that's available that will end up having long-term detrimental effects like marijuana's. A lot of the research now is coming out to show marijuana, for example, with heavy usage, can lead to psychosis and schizophrenia. In Colorado, where obviously they've got full legalization, you've got somebody dying on the roads because of a marijuana-related traffic accident every 2.5 days. The number of people dying in those accidents has more than doubled in Colorado since they've legalized it. So there are very serious public safety effects when you legalize marijuana. And that's what we're really trying to avoid here in Nebraska by doing it the right way, which is going through the FDA.
Okay, let's talk about CBD then, cannabidiol. Products are being sold in Nebraska. Your Attorney General has said they're illegal right now, yet they're still being sold. Would you direct him to crack down on businesses doing that?
Well, first of all, our Attorney General doesn't report to me. He is an independently elected public official. And just like with anything else, law enforcement has to make a decision with regard to how they're going to deploy their limited resources. And I really would defer to law enforcement how they're going to make those decisions. But as the Attorney General said, it's still illegal.
What about industrial hemp? Could you go there?
Well, as you know, industrial hemp has been made legal under the new Farm Bill. Right. And so now the USDA has certain rules about how that has to be done with regard to inspections and content of THC and all that sort of thing. But our Department of Agriculture is already working through what sort of regulatory environment would be involved with that. We've sat down with Senator Wayne to talk about a bill that would make sure that our laws are complying with what the USDA needs with regard to the Farm Bill and so forth. So we're working our way through that process right now. And it is probably one of the things that maybe some people don't know, but actually hemp used to be grown in Nebraska back into, like World War II era time. So it's not a new crop for us. But it is something that we have to comply with what the USDA is saying, and that's what we're going down the path to do.
Okay. Let's go back a little bit to the workforce. You mentioned the scholarships, this nearly 6.8 million or whatever it is that you're giving. How do you keep those students in Nebraska after they take the scholarships? What's to say they just don't take the money and run?
Right. So, well, first of all, these are going to be Nebraska students that are going to be eligible for these scholarships, whether we're talking about the community colleges, state colleges, or University of Nebraska. With all these institutions of higher education, we've asked to work with them on tracking this to see if these scholarships help students complete their education. Maybe part of the issue with not getting your degree is financial, so this should help address that. We want to look to see if they stay within the career fields they start in, and then we also want to see how quickly do they get a job after they graduate, and where do they get that job. So this is really the beginning of a process to take a look at how scholarship programs can help us, educate our kids, make sure they're going into fields where we have high demand, and then of course we're targeting those fields of high demand, so they should be able to find those jobs here in our state. There's not going to be a requirement for them to stay here, but we want to track that and see how it works.
An issue that comes up periodically with younger workers is access to mass transit and public transportation. Omaha is discussing this. Would you support a change in Omaha's mass transit or possibly Lincoln's as well in the urban areas?
Well, one of the things I would recommend them looking at is autonomous vehicles. We actually just passed a bill last year that is very forward thinking with regard to allowing car companies to be able to test automated vehicles here in our state. The city of Lincoln is actually going down a pilot program to have a shuttle that runs around Lincoln that is an autonomous vehicle. And that's using future type of technology to be able to address the needs. And so if you're thinking about what kind of mass transit system do we need, well, let's not look at the past and look at the old things. Let's look at the future and see what the new things are that maybe don't require all the infrastructure to be built, don't require the disruption to people's lives as that infrastructure is being put in place, and can be implemented probably at a lot lower cost. So those are the things I'd encourage cities to take a look at. And frankly, having I got a chance to ride in that shuttle last year, it's really cool. So it's also got, if you're talking about trying to attract young people, it's got a cool factor to it because it's new.
Yeah, but you also have to work into the commute time. That's also an issue. If you just put more autonomous vehicles on there, on the roads, that's not going to help the commute time, really.
Well, I would actually disagree with you there, Rob, because, think about it. Once you start going down the path of new technology, you can get creative on all sorts of things. So, for example, one of the things we see in other cities, they've got high occupancy vehicles. Well, you could have lanes that are dedicated to autonomous vehicles, or also the technology can get to the point where you actually are able to time those autonomous vehicles in such a way that you actually improve traffic flow. So I think there's lots of opportunities out there to be able to leverage this technology, and that's why I'd really encourage cities that are thinking about this, think to the future, not back to the past.
Okay. Senator Halloran has introduced a bill that would allow teachers to carry concealed weapons into schools. Your thoughts?
Well, certainly if that's one of the solutions that teachers thought they wanted, I would be supportive of that. However, I've gotten together a group of educators, mental health care professionals, and law enforcement officials to talk about what we can do to improve school safety. And there's a lot of other things we can do as well, with regard to that. A lot of it around communication and working together better, helping to identify children who need our help and that sort of thing. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to be able to focus on that and really help make our schools safer.
Well, next, the governor weighs in on the death penalty and the state of the state. First, a reminder, your comments are an important part of the show. Email them to news@ketv.com. Love to read them. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Wrapping up our conversation with Governor Pete Ricketts. Now, he says Nebraska's death penalty is not dead, even though the state no longer has access to the drugs to carry out a lethal injection.
We are still pursuing avenues to be able to acquire the drugs to be able to carry out the sentences that the judges and the courts and the juries have ordered.
Okay. If we can't get them, what's your option?
Well, we're still pursuing those, so we're just continuing to look right now about how we can do that. So I'm really not to the point of looking at what are other alternatives, because I think there's still avenues we can go down.
Okay. There's a measure to restrict wind turbines in Nebraska. Senator Brewer has a measure that doesn't really restrict, it adds regulations. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I generally at this stage, with a lot of those bills that are coming down the pike, I let the legislature go through their process. So it's still very early stage with regard to all these bills. Some of them haven't even got a hearing yet. So I kind of like to let the senators have a chance to kind of work through the legislative process before I comment on specific bills.
What have you had to give up that you really wanted to keep? Your wish list. Give up. What have you had to say, I can't get that from the legislature?
Well, I'm not giving up on anything. I'm still governor for 4 more years. We're going to keep working on this
up
stuff.
Until now. I mean, you've had to make concessions. Obviously, there's been filibusters the last few years where you haven't been able to get your property tax plan through as you wanted it. You've had to give some things up. Everybody has to give things up in negotiations.
Oh, yeah, it's absolutely a give and take. I mean, you mentioned property taxes. We had a very good bill last year that would have been a long-term commitment to property tax relief. It would have been a 20% rebate on all your property taxes. It would have been phased in over time to fit within the budget. It was a very good bill. So disappointed that got filibustered and we didn't make progress on that. And frankly, those are the types of ideas we need to think about when it comes to property tax relief, because we didn't get into the situation overnight. It's been a dozen years in the making. If you look at the budget's always a give and take as well. While a significant part of my recommendations do get approved, not all of them do. Last year, for example, I recommended some of the cuts to be able to fit within our budget, 2% across the board for everybody. The legislature came back and said, we only want to cut the university 1%. I signed that bill within a matter of days. So again, that's part of the give and take in the legislative process to be able to make those things happen. And so, I guess I don't necessarily look at it as giving things up. The things that are priorities, like property tax relief, we're going to continue to push forward on. And other things, with regard to the budget, are things that we just have to work with the legislature on.
So finally then, state of the state, good. What is it?
The state of our state is strong and growing. If you look at, for the last 2 years, we have won the Governor's Cup from Site Selection Magazine for the most economic development projects per capita of any state in the country. And what that represents is those companies' willingness to invest in our state and create those jobs. So we are ranked #1 as the most fiscally stable state in the country by Mercatus Center at George Mason University. We're ranked #2 with regard to environmental, or rather our regulatory environment by Forbes. We're ranked #2 for lowest cost of state doing business by CNBC. We've got the 3rd highest wage growth of any state in the country since 2014, 4th highest workforce participation rate, 5th best state overall for business by Forbes. We're #6 for volunteerism, and 7th lowest unemployment rate. So you can see we've got a dynamic environment here in Nebraska where companies want to invest and grow. We certainly have our challenges. If you look at agriculture, we've had low commodity prices now for about 5 years, and farm income has been cut by over 60% in our state. And that creates a lot of challenges for our farm and ranch families, and which is why we have to continue to work on how we deliver property tax relief. So, there's great things going on here in the state of Nebraska, and we're going to continue to go out and promote the state all over the world to tell people why we've got such a great place. We got the best place in the world to live, work, and raise a family.
Remember, if you missed any part of this show or you want to watch it again, we're putting it online. Just go to KETV.com, click on the menu button, and look for Chronicle. I'm Rob McCartney. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here next Sunday morning for KETV News Watch 7's Chronicle.